open date, hire dates, and what they're all getting paid and what you're paying them in benefits. And someone's like, "Oh man, it's gonna take me like 2 weeks." And I was like, "Okay, well, if you were trying to sell your business right now, that'd be a problem."
Or even talking to them about like downline agents,
Yeah,
and like what the economics are,
and accounting those, knowing where all those contracts are, and what the terms of all those contracts are, right? Like getting my clients prepared from an organizational level of like, you need to know where all your important documents are, what the terms of all of them are. You need to understand, here's how I get all my reporting, here's how I review my reporting, here's how I do my financials in a consistent and meaningful way, where if we sell your business and you have to go into accounting diligence and the accounting's not done properly, you could be looking at a massive write-down of your transaction value. Like, isn't that something you're going to want to know far before you sign an LOI to sell your business at a price you think is good, but now, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, after we get through diligence, it's going to come down by 30% because we didn't take care of something you easily could have taken care of prior to that.
Welcome to the Payments Experts Podcast, a podcast of Global Legal Law Firm. We hope you enjoy this episode. We're really excited. We got an in-studio podcast today. Joining us is Anthony Malatesta from all the way from Boston with Wellesley Hills Financial Group, and Chris Dryden, who's always with us. Chris, the founding and managing partner of Global Legal Law Firm. Gentlemen, we're looking forward to a great conversation today. Welcome to the podcast, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're here. Anthony's in house. We've been trying to get him here for a while. He's the pride of Nahant, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. Anthony's a longtime friend. He actually sits in a parallel universe to our client base that we do, which is really important. When we were talking about, actually getting into this particular conversation and kind of where you want to focus, and because I think what Anthony does is equally important to what we do in the space, which is really become an advisor for how people are going to enter, operate, and then exit the space. And so, like, it's a business advisor capacity. Known Anthony since he actually fell into the space about a decade ago or so.
Yeah, you're the first person I met at my first regional.
Yeah, so like it's funny how you meet people in the industry, because I always watch this with industry participants where you go to the shows and everybody knows one another, but then like they change employment, but they still everyone knows. So it's cool because we're kind of part of that group these days. We just sort of sit on the fringes a little bit. But Anthony's a principal in Wellesley Hills Financial. So first, I guess probably the more interesting thing would be is, how did you fall into payments? Because I ask everybody, I fell into payments. How'd you do it?
So my job right now is a continuation of an unpaid internship I got my sophomore year of college. I went to a school outside of Boston called Bentley University. It's a great school for accounting and finance. And if you want to do accounting and finance, they had a whole bunch of opportunities within a lot of the big corporate partners that they had at school where there's a lot of opportunity there, and they gave you a really good foundational training of basics of accounting and finance. And I got an internship my sophomore year with a small firm that was doing M&A advisory, and they were helping Heartland Payments, a bunch of roll-ups for K through 12 companies that were doing integrated payments. That was like 2012. So we were super early integrated payment strategy, and I started helping them out with doing research, and I was like, I think there's opportunity here. And I never would have guessed it. And I stuck with it. I started working part-time throughout college. And then once I started after school, I was like, you know what, this is it. And basically it's been a direct line from there to here.
Yeah. And the funny thing is like when I met Anthony, he was as equally lost in the industry, kind of as a whole, going to a show and trying to figure out where do I fit into this place? Because being on the fringe and kind of being on the periphery, what we do, it supplements, but it's not like a direct operational flow,
No, totally. And that's maybe like to this day, I think maybe like the biggest blind spot for what I do, because I'm not in the trenches every day, signing up merchant accounts. But I think that kind of benefits us because it allows us just to have a different perspective than the clients that we operate, right? Like I work on the side of things where here's where the capital markets intersect with this industry, and that's kind of what fuels business valuations, and that's kind of the tide that's been really pushing a lot of the transactional activity in the space, and you don't get to understand that if you're heads down writing merchant accounts, right? So I think that's the perspective that I can share, and I've had enough experience with these businesses where I know a lot of the workflows, I know a lot of the pain points of the business owners in the space, and I can really help them and empathize with them there, but then show them this other perspective that they're not getting.
Yeah, I mean, that was the interesting part is that, we had the luxury of actually having a single client when we started. And so we did everything for them. So we had to know I've learned through just owning a business, you break it down into three. It's marketing, fulfillment, and servicing, right? I mean, like every business, it can be more dynamic than that, but it's really...
No, it doesn't matter.
That kind of like fits it, right? So we actually got kind of like an up close and personal view of the sales process because we kind of had to know it to defend it because it was pretty aggressive.
Yep.
Call it the smash and grab. And back then it was really different because it wasn't as strategic when you went out to sell. But even to today, it always amazes me that there's so many people that we service, especially on the contract side, that want me to go through the Schedule A and like give feedback or red line on a Schedule A. And I was like, no, we usually reserve that for you guys because you're doing
this is a business conversation. Yeah,
yeah, totally.
This is a legal thing that
I don't even talk to the business people generally.
No, totally, and that's something we see too. Luckily, we've got enough contacts in our space, and we see enough of these things where we can kind of give our 2 cents. And we're not lawyers; we don't give legal advice, but at least we can say, "Hey, I've read enough of these contracts where I know what the general terms are and can kind of help out." So I kind of get the same thing from the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing. You guys spend your time in the contracts the way that we spend our times in the residual reports, right? I mean, it's like a little on the converse of one another. But I learned like one of the benefits of having just regular conversations with Anthony. I mean, sometimes we work on transactions together. Most of the time we don't. But the nice part is that the knowledge base that he has supplements what I'm doing a lot of times and really gives new perspective to... like when we were talking coming on, it was like what we do, people find value in, right? Like a lot of times it takes a little while for people that are, especially fledgling business, to find value in legal. But then, it's like your doctor or, like you want to find value in the relationships that are important. But I think more and more I look at your relationships you have with clients, same clients, and it's equally important. Like it's, you have to really think it through.
I like to think so. I think my long-term clients would agree with you on that. I think one of the things that I definitely want to help people understand about my business and what we do is that it's not just transactional. I kind of had this ethos when we founded Wellesley Hills 5 years ago where I kind of wanted I couldn't find a way. It was a mouthful. It didn't fit in the marketing slogans, but I was like, I want to find a way to do relationship-driven transactions, not have transactional relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people think of our business, as an investment bank, people, just to kind of give the broad strokes, because we haven't really hit that yet in the conversation, and people don't really understand what we do. We're an investment bank that focuses on fintech payments, B2B software. So anything related to capital markets transactions, whether you're trying to take on a loan, find a new equity investor, sell your assets, whether that's a portfolio or a piece of technology, or eventually exit your business. We run those transactions where we do a whole host of support services, whether that is valuation work, analysis work on portfolios, a whole bunch of analytics. I'd like to just get into in the conversation to help drive home the point of like what we provide business owners with the knowledge base of. But I think people just call me up and be like, do you have any portfolios for sale? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm happy to help you with that. And we can have that conversation. I think a lot of times the business owners don't, or the people who are approaching me don't understand, okay, is whatever you have going to help my business or hurt my business if I buy it? Because I've sold a lot of portfolios where I don't think it really helped the buyer at the end of the day. But if they wanted to buy it, I help them buy it for sure. And,
it's funny you say that because, one of the things that we see a lot of times are sour relationships, right? And a lawyer is one of those things that you would want if you have business partners to figure out what the rights and duties are. Like what's the corporate entity you want, what's the structure, and you force the client to like maybe look at things a little bit further out than just, hey, we're going to start this business. But with you, it's the same thing, because if you were to actually start to talk to them, I mean, some of the people that I see that are looking for financing, it's to buy out their partner. They want to get away from a bad relationship.
No, plenty of that. Plenty of that, exactly. And I think the one thing that I would like to do more work of, because I think it's what we do best, and I think it's where we really provide the best long-term value for our clients, is helping them build a plan for their business. And the earlier in the life cycle, the better, because to me, it's kind of an intentionality thing. It's like, what is your intention with this business? What are you trying to build? And I think everybody more or less is looking at some point to have a good exit. It's hard to figure out where and how that occurs, but I think everybody has a goal in mind of, what dollar amount that is, or whether that's like the security in life it gets them after, or opening them up to, level up to go be with the next partner, right? Take some chips off the table and then do it again, do it bigger. But I don't think a lot of business owners actively plan for that and operate their business with that intention in mind, because I think, especially in the ISO space, it's just sales-driven business. Most of the operators are heads down, putting out whatever fire it is that day, or just trying to get the next 5-10 deals a month through the door, right? They're not actively thinking about how that next decision is impacting their long-term business.
Totally.
And also, too, not spending on, whether that's time or dollars on building up the internal review processes and analysis that they need to understand of like how their business is actually performing now. You can't get to an exit, whatever your goal number is, without knowing what it's going to take to get there. Do you have the growth that you need? Do you have the profitability do you need? Do you have the KPIs and underlying the business that you need to be able to achieve that?
Well, I think the more important thing is that a lot of people that are starting a business, right? They think exit, but they don't have any of the building blocks to exit, right? It's sort of like, hey, I want to start this business. I want to protect myself. I want to do this and that. And you start talking about corporate entities and they're a little bit lost. And it's really, you can make it less complex, right? You can really break it down and provide it in a digestible format where, you can teach and give them things that they're not even thinking about on their own, which I think because I find a lot of value in looking at, okay, what does my exit look like from the financial side? I think that's like way more important than what we do, right? But without having the experience in doing what I do, I wouldn't know all the things that you just rattled off. These are things that I think you kind of stumble into when you are a business owner and you don't have a plan and you're just thinking about, hey, I could make some money, but maybe not on the very front end, but I would think by the time you want to start like paying payroll tax, you might want to be thinking some of these things.
Absolutely. And what are you building at the end of the day? I had a meeting with my business partners yesterday, and the topic came up for us of like what our road looks like and how long we want to do it and where our exit opportunities might be for our business. And I'd be hypocritical if I wasn't practicing what I preach here, that I'm trying to help other clients with. Like, I need to take that approach to my own business of what the end game is and where I'm at and all that. And thankfully I'm young enough and got a long career in front of me where it's not too big of a question right now. It's a ways off. So, the immediate focus for us is building and helping more clients. But it's a serious conversation that I think everybody has to really look at their choices and how they're operating. And to me, I think the best way to help business owners visualize that is through the analytics we provide and going through the business and understanding, okay, what does your portfolio look like? What does your sales channel look like? What's your attrition look like? What does your profitability look like? And how does that all play into your value today? And that's an undertaking that is simpler for me and my team just because we've built a business around it and been doing it for years. The funny thing is, though, what business owners discover just through going through the exercise with me is manyfold, not just from the answers we give them, but like, here's a really easy one. Pulling the data that I need to provide you the insights is a lot more difficult for some business owners than it is for others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, depending on what your level of
organization
service provider is. Yeah, totally.
No, but even just your level of organization within your own record keeping, right? Your own accounting books.
Well, it's funny you say that. So, like, we do a lot of regulatory defense work, and a lot of times it's just responding to subpoenas. And you have to, I mean, they're looking for business records, usually for one of your merchants but, you know, you get into a record keeping and retention destruction / conversation of what that looks like, what you're required to keep, because depending on your sophistication, but I find that valuable and I want to come back to that. But the thing that I struggle with, because you were talking about having your own exit, you know, it's interesting because, Jeremy will attest to this. Like, I call us in this firm like a group of refugees. And I think part of my mission in owning this business is to give people a place where they can thrive by just being themselves, right? And when I've thought about exit recently, I've thought about what does that mean for everybody, you know? Because it does enter my mind of, I run a business, but like I employ a lot of people and hopefully provide them a really good place to come and spend their time and work towards something. But you know, when you're talking about exiting, you just rattled off all of like the financial parameters. And then I think about it because what we sell is labor. And so, I think about it from the employee context too, and kind of like corporate culture, corporate structure, what that looks like.
No, 1,000%. And like, we're the same way, right? I mean, we are a 5-year-old investment bank, right? And a lot of the other firms in our space are decades and decades or over 100 years old, right? Like the culture is very different and I share the
less nimble.
Totally, right? And I share your value of giving opportunities for people to come and earn a living and make a life for themselves, right? I mean, I think that's getting harder and harder out here these days.
Where do you see that you find the most value for your clients and what you're doing?
I would say ultimately, I think what we do best is representing them for whatever their capital markets needs are. So sell side processes for selling a business, selling an asset portfolio, selling or setting them up with credit facilities or equity investors, finding the right partners at the right terms. We've got a huge network that we've been able to work through over the years, so we know which groups in the industry, depending on what a particular business looks like from their own factors, who's going to value that the most aggressively, who's really going to see more value in that than the rest of the market to get them the best outcome for their exit. Now, that's the center of the bullseye in terms of working with a group, and that's the culmination of a long time of building a business usually. Where we can find value before that event is in helping companies be the best prepared for that event. Because that event, a lot of times, is not of our clients' choosing. They get approached by somebody, and it seems like a good opportunity, so they want to explore it, right? And a lot of times when that happens to them, I say, okay, well, we can certainly help you, get a deal done with them, but there's no way of knowing that that's the best outcome unless we open the process.
Well, I was going to say that's the great time to look under the hood and figure out, where are you missing opportunity?
But it's a good time to test the market when somebody approaches you and you're thinking about it, because then you have the benefit of having multiple bidders for your asset and really running a competitive process that maximizes your transaction value. But we want to make sure our clients are prepared for that time if it comes before they think they're ready. Right. I mean, we were talking earlier, I said it's really enlightening for business owners if I'm just asking them for, on their initial evaluation, like, hey, I just need a list of all your employees, open date, hire dates, and what they're all getting paid and what you're paying them in benefits. And someone's like, oh man, it's going to take me like 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, if you were trying to sell your business right now, that'd be a problem.
Or even talking to them about like downline agents.
Yeah, exactly.
And like what the economics are.
Counting those, knowing where all those contracts are and what
what the
terms of all those contracts are, right? Like getting my clients prepared from an organizational level of like, you need to know where all your important documents are, what the terms of all of them are. You need to understand here's how I get all my reporting. Here's how I review my reporting. Here's how I do my financials in a consistent and meaningful way. Where if we sell your business and you have to go into accounting diligence and the accounting's not done properly, you could be looking at a massive write down of your transaction value. Like, isn't that something you're going to want to know far before you sign an LOI to sell your business at a price you think is good, but now, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, after we get through diligence, it's going to come down by 30% because we didn't take care of something you easily could have taken care of prior to that.
Or even take care of opportunities. Like when I was talking about downline agents, I mean, a lot of times there's opportunity there to actually have a liquidation event with them.
1,000%.
And, or allow them to tag along and, do like a simultaneous close and let them benefit. And especially if you're going to do it on a go forward.
And that's something we can do too in terms of like we've set up a lot of debt facilities for companies to help them raise money to help buy out their downline agents to increase their cash flow so that when it comes time for them to exit, they're in a more profitable position, and we can help them structure those deals in a way where they're going to get more production out of those agents than they did before. Yeah. Right? We can help set up the incentives properly there. So there's a ton to do, and really what drives all of that is analysis work. Like, you cannot put your finger in the wind and get a good sense of what your attrition is, really, right? Like every ISO owner I've talked to thinks they have the lowest attrition in the world. And
well, what does it mean? Like, it was funny. I was doing a transaction, and it was like kind of a hybrid. I'm working on it right now, and part of it's like card payment residuals, the other part's ATM, ATM process, which is a totally different animal, and totally different valuation, and they actually had to spin out a portion of it because there's like physical ATMs and then there's contracts to refill and all that.
Yep.
But there was a kind of a term in there of like merchant attrition, and we rewrote the clause for like some sort of not minimal performance, like not a guarantee, but like an earn out benchmark of if there's a reduction in revenue beyond this, but. The first term that was used was merchant attrition, and it was like, well, that's that's a nebulous term, right? Yeah, totally.
Does that mean accounts leaving? Does that mean dollars of revenue lost? Is that dollars of volume lost, right? And those are the first layer of metrics, right? I mean, the next layer is if we look at just the accounts that leave. Okay, well, was this account even processing any transactions, or did this account ever turn on for processing? Yeah. If you remove those, does your attrition look better or worse? Usually better.
Yeah, but then your revenue goes down, per account.
Yeah, and there's
probably not substantially.
Not substantially, but that's another factor of like how much revenue are you generating from those accounts?
Yeah,
and is it more than 10-15% of your overall revenue? If so, that's probably a problem, right? Because it probably just shows that either you're milking a lot of money from merchants that aren't processing, and
they're not even aware, probably.
Correct. Yeah, and that could be a problem down the line, or you just have a lot of underperforming accounts that you're never getting turned on. You've got a lot of agents that are submitting deals that they're not activating. Like, I don't know how certain ISOs are set up in terms of, is it the home office that does the activations? Is the agent responsible for the activations and making sure a merchant gets live? If it's the agent, you might think an agent's killing it in terms of the number of deals he's submitting, but he might not be getting those accounts activated at a good enough rate, right? So we look at portfolio, and we will break it down not just on the first level, but on the second and third. Of we had a group that hired us to look at all of their sales teams. What is each sales team's track record compared to the others in terms of performance, whether it's on attrition, number of deals submitted, average volume per deal submitted, right? Like looking at those metrics of understanding, okay, a higher volume per month merchant is a more valuable merchant on average. It might be a little bit lower on the margin, but all else being equal in this industry, higher volumes equals higher revenues. So, and those merchants typically also have a longer lifespan, a longer shelf life, and lower attrition as well, right? So if you're running a churn and burn shop out of 3 or 4 of your agents, and only one of them's actually out there producing good deals, your book's going to skew towards a churn model, and might not be the business you want to run. And you can say to your agents, hey, this guy's doing great in terms of the number of deals he's submitting. It might be 40% of the actual overall number of deals as these other guys, but his deals are lasting longer, earning more residuals, and that's building a longer term value of your business. Yeah. So you want to incentivize the rest of your agents to perform in the same way. and you want to understand what the attrition is like between each of those different factors. So we can break that down in so many different ways, and it's honestly just a factor of the quality of the data that we get from our clients. And sometimes the clients are like, hey, we're going to talk to our processor to get better data so that we can give you more data so that you can give us more insight on how to fine tune what we're doing.
Well, it's interesting because we have a lot of personalities that come on, and they all kind of step in different areas of the business. And we have this kind of consistent theme of like, what is the ISO and what's the future of the ISO, right? And we had Alan Kopelman on, and I thought he said it really well. He's like, if you're not selling software, you ain't going to be here long.
No.
And I think that's also interesting is like breaking down metrics to see, who are my merchants and who are my strategic partners? Because I almost think it's like less end user now and more like, how do I find strategic partners? So, software users is one way for sure.
I would say the deals that I've gotten the craziest multiples on in the past 12 months have all been software driven. Like books and businesses that if they weren't software driven would go for like 30x are getting like 80, 90 from some of them. And like those are businesses that have established enough scale where one of them got treated as if it was a software business, right? And it got an overall top line revenue multiple on its overall business as an enterprise. And but at the end of the day, 95% of its revenue was generated by merchant processing. So in essence, that's an ISO. They built technology though.
Yeah, with the stickiness, right?
Correct.
It's like,
and their customers were all ISVs, and then they had the merchants from their ISVs as well. They generated the processing. Now there's a lot of splits that have to be given, and that's an extremely competitive environment. You need the right product for that. But that's the way it's moving. Since I came into the industry, people have been telling me the ISO model is dying, but the economy's too big, right? Like, no bank, no card network, no technology company is going to be able to hit every nook and cranny of it, right? And there's a overwhelmingly large amount of merchants that if something's wrong, they want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. They want to have a relationship with somebody, and they want to trust that when something goes wrong, that person will help them out.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And it's an opportunity, I think, for ISOs to build brands around that. I mean, payments is a commodity, right? At the end of the day, it's ones and zeros growing across the telephone line, aside from some of the other products to get introduced to it. So I don't know another commoditized industry where brand means less than payments.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that is always discussed is as like a post close obligation is servicing.
Yeah, well, I think that's the reason, right? Like,
yeah, and transitioning servicing between the seller and the buyer, because if you've got a good seller or a seller who's a good servicer, they're there because like somebody's picking up the phone at 10 o'clock at night or
totally.
whatever. Yeah,
and it's a perception thing for the merchants because merchants a lot of times don't perceive their payments provider as somebody who provides a service to their business. They look at it as somebody who taxes their business.
Yeah,
right. And so if you can change that perception and build a better relationship with your merchants, it'll come through in the numbers. Like I'll look at books where I'm like, you're just selling terminals to these guys, no software, no nothing. I'm like, your attrition's on the floor. Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, we pick up the phone when they call. It was funny. I remember when cash discount first came out, I was like, in the industry, people were like, yeah, it's been a race to the bottom, and we've hit the bottom. And I'm like, well, somebody just got out a drill and just drilled through the floor with cash discount. Like, sure. We just kept going.
Yeah, for sure.
There's subterranean now, and
well, it is because they're doing rebates, dude. I hear people on their entry, they're like the initial overture is we rebate what we get back to you. I'm like, dude, that's a violation of card brand rules. You're not supposed to be doing any of that. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Yeah. So, if
people are actually out actively like presenting that.
Yeah, I would caution those people to think about a new strategy of product over price. The amount of value that you can give to a merchant today in terms of software, it's not as difficult as it is to do integrations as it was to do 10 years ago.
Totally.
Like the tools are out there, the software products are out there, and there are highly specific business solutions for most verticals nowadays. Like as I was talking to somebody who was doing like pool and sauna, like contractor software. Like they had gotten like that specific, right?
Yeah.
So like, whatever you can find, and integrate to and sell, I would tell business owners focus on that, because the more you sell your merchants not just their payment processing software but their operating system of their software, the more you have an opportunity to now sell them additional products, right? You can lock them in with the good service. You can be competitive on price, but they'll be less price resistant if they're getting more things from you, whether that's payroll, insurance, HR services, loans, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you can sell to merchants. I think all the integrated banking products are going to be really big, but those are things that will take merchant trust to develop, right? Like if a merchant doesn't trust the payment processing provider to process their payments correctly, they're not going to trust them with their operating account.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So you need to come in, you need to build that rapport, build that cachet with them to be able to get that. But I still think there's plenty of opportunity, because no matter who the bank or payment processor is, the market is too big for them to hit everybody. And there's opportunity to go out and capture market share with more product.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny because I see, like you're talking about pool and sauna contractor software. I mean, I see that level of kind of like specialization detail, but it's only getting more and more like that. And I think as like the merchants become a little more desensitized to the process of interacting with technology, I think that those other value add, if you want to call them, like whether it's payroll or, some form of lending or, like micro lending or whatever, being built into their POS that actually takes data that the POS is tracking. Is because I've always thought with a good POS system, you can see real-time data as far as what sales and receipts of things are. And if it ties into QuickBooks and, if you wanted to do underwriting from that, it would be pretty simple and probably a lot better than some of the underwriting I see out there.
Oh, totally. That's absolutely possible. I mean, like Square was really, really thoughtful with that. I mean, Square Capital, they can just look and auto approve loans for you.
Exactly.
Right from the POS. And that's, they're a smart technology company, but it's easy to replicate that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we kind of like launched into what you were saying, hey, I want to end this with, but what do you see out in the marketplace these days? I mean, I feel like we've kind of been talking about it, but...
No, we have. I mean, activity, I think, generally is up, right? I think there is a high level of demand out there. There's still a large amount of interest from institutional capital in this space, which is always helpful for pushing activity. So a lot of the large institutionally backed operators in the space are still hungry for opportunities, still hungry for acquisitions. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there. I would say from a valuation standpoint, it's a bit of a gap, right? Like the premium opportunities that are out there where there's growth, cash flow, go forward commitment to operating, and especially if there's vertical specificity and technology attached, those opportunities are getting as high as multiples as I've seen in the last 5 to 6, 7 years.
Anthony, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
And this is in regards to Wellesley Financial. What is something that you would want to say to prospective clients of yours who are coming in the door? What's an issue that you're facing again and again and again that you wish they had done maybe prior to reaching out to you? Or in other words, what are some of those hurdles to bringing on new clients in your space?
Stole my question.
I would say understanding what you're trying to achieve with your business long term. I think I get a lot of questions around, hey, I want to find a debt facility, and that's something that we're working on too. I think ISOs in particular have had an extraordinarily hard time getting loans at what I would call like affordable terms.
That's like any small business though, right? I mean, there's not really like a loan product for $500,000 and down for a business necessarily.
Yeah, I'm talking probably more between like $1 million and $10 million, which I think for a lot of traditional businesses, your community bank has been the one that underwrites those loans. But
you got to get to that type of number for them to have a product for you too.
Correct. Yes, but the funny thing is about the banking industry is that they just don't understand this space at like kind of the local small business lending side, and it's funny because I mean ISO out here has a contract with a bank at the end of the day. And I think a lot of the banks in this space also see that as like an additional risk. It's like, okay, we're already sponsoring these groups to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of the money we're passing through. We're not going to also loan to them. I think they just see that as an additional risk at times. So lending is one of the areas that we're building out and have solutions for ISOs that are looking for loans for whether it's just general operating or buying up the downlines we talked about earlier. So having an idea of where you want to go and questions about how you can make your business better. And I think the way we always think about that is like, well, we have to look at the numbers and help get you an insight of how the performance is, right? That to me, the analytical capabilities that we have, I'll toot our own horn, and I think we're the best in the industry at the way we analyze these businesses, and allowing our clients to be kind of hungry for those answers of, hey, what are my KPIs at the levels that I haven't seen yet, right? And what can you tell me? What can you share with me about how I've been operating, and be curious in that regard. I think that's something that every business owner is open to, and it's a way that me and my partners have looked at our own business around like how are we performing. We don't have a merchant portfolio that we can cut the numbers up on and check just as easily, but we have our own that we track and we manage. And I would want business owners to think about their own, because sometimes it seems, I'm sure you've seen this, where some guys, the only number that matters at the end of the day is what's in the bank account, and if there's money in it, they're cool.
Yeah, totally. No, but that's the thing. Like I had a guy that I've known for a long time, and he's an IP attorney in town, and so when we have an IP issue, I'll bring him on. But I've known him since before either one of us went to law school, and he came up. I hadn't seen him in maybe like in an office context, maybe like 3 years or so, and he came up. And we went out to lunch, and he came back to the office, and he was looking around. He's like, "Yeah, man, you guys have really matured." And I think what you're talking about is like business maturity, finding a business owner that wants to understand a little bit more of what am I doing this all for, right? Like, I mean, sometimes I just think that takes like life maturity to get to that point too, or But I hear what you're saying, because I feel like that's one of those things where like you got to have a design, you got to have like an actual like direction and focus of what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too hippy dippy with it, but like everything comes out of your intentionality, right? Like what are you trying to do with your life? And like that's an extension of what you're trying to do with your business at the end of the day.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you.
I think about that with regards to my business all the time. It's like I know what I'm doing this for. Right, I want to establish security for myself and my family. Right, I want to create opportunities, for other people to help them live their best lives. Right, like that's why I'm doing this, and I think a lot of folks see that in what they're doing, but the day to day can kind of bring them away from that, and especially when it comes to thinking around long term planning and exit planning, especially like having the goals of, okay, I want to get to this amount of revenue or this valuation in the next 12, 24, 36 months. Like, if you don't know where you're at today, you can't measure where those goals are in the future. Yeah. Right. And that's what I want to give business owners. I want to give business owners an understanding of, here's where you're at today. If you want to sell in 5 years, do you want to sell for a certain number? Is that number going to be achievable in 5 years? Okay. If not, now do we need to readjust your goals? Because if you want to get there in 5 years, we can put them all together and we can tell you exactly what it'll take to get there. Now, it might not be possible with your current level of employees, capitalization, but if it does take changes to those things, well, we can tell you, okay, if if you hire this many more people, here's how much runway you have until profitability becomes an issue. If profitability becomes an issue, here's how we can raise more money for you. If we can raise more money for you, here's what that'll get you in terms of new boards, revenue growth, valuation growth. Like, we can create all of those scenarios and game plan as many of them as our clients want. It just takes a little bit of curiosity and willing to like go through that process of asking those questions, and we can give those answers, and we can do the work if we can get the data from them to do that. So that's what we provide for our clients. And then when that time comes where they're like, hey, somebody called up and they think they can hit my number, I say, great, let's make sure and test it in the market. Because plenty of times I've had people say that to me, and I go out and I bring other buyers to the table, and I get them 30 to 40% more from the same buyer just by running a competitive process and making sure that the market validates what they're worth. Right? Like, that's where we really help to have the best outcomes, because then we can take what our clients thought was a good outcome and turn it into a great outcome. Yeah,
and I think that that's really important. It's kind of like, I called it, looking under the hood. Mm-hmm. But, like, you don't know what you don't know until somebody, like, helps you with it. And so it's I just think that's really important, because you might, testing the waters of the marketplace. It's also testing the waters of like, hey, how can my business improve? And having somebody else look at it from outside in, who's got a good background of watching other similar type entities and business operations, I think that's super valuable.
And how is the market going to perceive your business?
Yeah.
If somebody like me doesn't look at it and you're testing the market on your own, do you know the questions that buyers are going to ask and how they're going to tear up your business in diligence? Are you going to be prepared for those questions?
A big one. Diligence, totally. And it's getting harder and harder, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
When interest rates went up, the lender in one of ours was in New York, and I think you were familiar with this. They needed an opinion from a New York counsel during diligence. They didn't even want my opinion because I was, even though I was representing a party, they didn't care. Like, it was really interesting because the financial institution was out of New York. So I thought that was I thought that was kind of interesting, but having somebody who understands the diligence process and knowing what they'll be looking for.
But even before diligence, just going to market, if there are flaws in your business model, isn't it better that you and I talk about them before we go to market so we can make a decision? Okay, well, that's a big enough flaw where it's going to cost you X amount of dollars off the valuation you want. Maybe we take 6 months. Here's the game plan to fix it. You come back and fix it. Then we're ready to go, and it's not an issue. Or if we got to go to market now, this, for whatever reason, here's how we're going to mitigate it. Here's a game plan. If these are the questions you're going to be asked. Here's how we manage it.
Yeah, right? No, I think that's I think that's more valuable than maybe anything else, is getting ready. Well, look, how do people get a hold of you?
WellesleyHillsFinancial.com. We also just launched a brand called merchantportfolios.com, where we'll be at all the regionals under that brand. That's strictly for the ISO community. So everything I talked about in terms of analytics, portfolio evaluations, analysis, all completely geared towards the ISO channel, lending. All that you can find at merchantportfolios.com. And then myself and my team are at Wellesley Hills Financial, and I'm at the regionals. I'm at Money 2020.
Don't worry, we flash on your cell phone number right about now.
Cool.
Exactly.
I got a business phone, business and personal phone. You can pull up a business phone. That's fine.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I appreciate you coming on.
No, it's great to be here.
Being here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Payments Experts Podcast, a podcast of Global Legal Law Firm. Visit us online today at globallegallawfirm.com.